sometimes that's all you can ask for.
That's all, yes, sir.
So her last one was Wednesday. So then I think they said 4 to 6 weeks she'll go back and do a CT scan or something. And they'll make sure that it's all working. Yes, as long as it's all done, she'll be done.
That's what we look for. Thumbs up right there when it's like that.
Yes, sir.
We hope.
Well, thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's good to see you.
We had a street one time with kids like that. And he said, oh no, that's not gonna be here. He said, I'll be safe.
Actually, New Year's Eve, we were having a singing. Dinosaurs, people, I've heard that much song.
Yeah, you see the note from Tammy, Elliot about her friend's baby.
Yeah, I was about to do it yesterday.
Sunday.
I don't know, it's really weird color here today. It's like blue. Oh. All right.
Hey, John.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, John.
Hey, Miss Lundy. Last time, baby.
I'm headed that way. All right, good morning. Good to have everyone with us this morning, Sunday. Rained for a little while, we stopped. They actually said it would stop by 10 o'clock. They actually got it right today. Wow. I mean, look at that. Every once in a while there's a miracle. It is good to see that. All right, I have to go outside today, so I'm glad it's gonna stop raining. All right. So we're gonna continue our study of Joshua. We're in Joshua chapter 6, the destruction of Jericho. And as we look at this, we'll go ahead and go into our classes. I don't, let me see. In our classes, into our questions. So we begin with our first question. It goes all the way back to lesson 15, back to Moses, the Exodus 1. Yes or no, did all of Jacob's 12 sons move to Egypt to live? Yes. One of them was already there, right? One of them, Joseph was already there, and then the other 11 joined him, of course, and they were all there with their dad and all their people, so everyone was there. Brings us down to lesson 31, back to Jesus in John 4. Jesus told the Samaritan lady that God is A, spirit, B, flesh and bones, or C, of the imagination. Spirit, exactly. Describe Jesus' healing of the nobleman's son. Something that the nobleman asked him, and then what Jesus did, and then something else the nobleman found out. All right. First of all, what did he ask Jesus to do? He asked him to heal his son. Now remember, he's not where his son is. So very important.
All he had to do was speak.
Exactly. He spoke and said your son is healed. And the man was, of course, the faith that he had. He left and went on home. And when he got home, what was the question that he asked those that were there? What time? What hour was it that he? And as he said, it was in the 7th hour. It was exactly the same time that Jesus said he was healed. And just a great moment of faith. All right, Joshua 2, spies of Jericho. What feelings did the people of Canaan have toward the Israelites and their God as described by Rahab?
They were afraid.
They said they were fearful, exactly right. They were very scared of what was going to happen, what was going to take place there. Which takes us to chapter 3, Joshua 3, Jordan on dry crossing of it. Who carried the ark of the covenant across the Jordan River? John 3:3. The priests which were in the tribe of Levites. And you always remember that. Remember, every Levite was a priest, but not every priest was a Levite, but not every Levite was a priest. Exactly right. They came out of there, but they weren't all priests. They had different jobs. When Joshua led the Israelites across the Jordan River, what season was it? Harvest season. That'd be right. And that's why we know it was so flooded the way it was. Why did Joshua set up 12 stones that had been taken from the middle of the Jordan River where the priest's feet had stood holding the ark? Memorial. To remember, everything that God, not what they did, but what God had done for them. Next question, what speed did the Israelites use in crossing the Jordan River? Light speed, right? They hurried. It said they hurried across. No haste. They're very fast across it, and to get across, of course. Which brings to Joshua chapter 5, man ceases. The man standing by the city of Jericho told Joshua that he was the captain of what? Of the Lord's army, exactly right. Very important to see that. This was an angel that we would see there. Why did the man standing by the city of Jericho tell Joshua to take off his sandal? Holy ground. Exactly, so it's holy ground. Like I said last week, Wednesday, it's always interesting. It says, take the sandal off your foot. It didn't say feet, but sure it's what he meant, both of them, but that's what we have. All right, brings us into Joshua. So we're going to look at the destruction of Jericho this morning, giving God the opportunity to fight our battles is really what we're looking at here, is what we're understanding. This is what the city would have looked like. I've showed you pictures before what it looks like excavated. It looks just like it's on a little hill up, and you see there's 2 walls. A lot of times we don't talk about that. We have through this class, so there are 2 walls here. And it was asked, I'm going to say this again, it was asked not long ago about the walls, which one did Rahab live in, the inner wall or the outer wall? And most pictures you look at, it shows outer. I would think after excavation, they found out that the outer wall is actually only about 6 feet wide. But this wall here, the inner wall, is actually 12 feet wide. So some think more likely she did live there, or her house was directly on the wall. Would be another way of looking at it, that she lived there. And that we would see that. The more I've studied this, the more I've looked at it, even over this last week, it sounds more likely that her house was on the wall, not actually in it. And so, which would make a lot more sense with Scarlet Road and everything with that, what we find. And the reason that is because of the archaeology that they found with it. All right, so we're going to remind you where we are, what we're doing. So here we are on the map, of course. We see here, here is Jericho right there. Here's where they crossed the Jordan River in this area. Gilgal, as we know, where they're going to be camping at their temporary headquarters. And it's probably about, you figure this, it's about a 5 mile, you notice the 5 miles right here, how far that is. So you're talking only, I mean, you're talking about a mile, a little less. I mean, they're right there. It's not far at all. Give you a little closer look at it. That's a little closer to see. This is important because after Jericho, they'll go over here to Ai, and we'll have all this going on, taking place. All right, so here we're going to understand the battle. We're going to understand a lot. You look at this picture, this is how most pictures are. Notice the red scarlet rope right here. That's on the outer wall, and that's where most put it at. Like I said, we don't know which it was, the outer or the inner, but it really doesn't matter. We know that they were saved and they lived there within the wall. Jericho, as we look at it, life was filled with battles. We know that even us today, we see not just them. Some are physical, many are emotional, even mental, but there's also spiritual battles that we deal with from time to time. And here, this is what Israel was dealing with. They were dealing with a physical, but it was also a spiritual battle in a sense, knowing what God would do for them, what the angels actually, we see the Lord's army said was there, ready to attack. Joshua 6, we encounter the story, the fall of Jericho, a fortified city standing between the Israelites and the fulfillment of God's promises that He gave them and showed them. This is a very powerful account, not only of God's miraculous intervention, but what happens when we give God the opportunity to fight our battles. Through this message, we will uncover principles of faith, obedience, and divine victory that we understand that are applied even to our everyday lives. And we're going to do that as we go through this a little bit. So as we look at this area of understanding the battle, let's go ahead and begin by reading Joshua 6, verses 1 through 2. Someone read that for us, please.
Now Jericho was secured shut because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. The Lord said to Joshua, see, I have given Jericho into your hand, its king and the mighty men of valor.
Thank you. So the city of Jericho, they're ready. The city of Jericho is ready for a fight, without a doubt. They're tightly shut up where no one has come in, no one's gone out. They're all staying there now at this point. I figure more likely we believe, and when you talk to scholars, they believe there was probably spies out before this, checking, seeing, of course, what Israel was doing, but very careful. But being where they were camped at, when they crossed the river, you see all those there, you're definitely going to be able to see them for a mile. That ain't going to be no problem at all. Looking at that the way it is. The first city, this is the first city that the people will face, that they will face the fight. Now, remember, they've already had a battle, but it was out in the middle of the field, out in the middle of the valley. This is the actual first town that they'll come upon. And remember, God said there's going to be many cities, many towns that they will conquer, that they will take over. And He said, everything would already be prepared for them. They wouldn't have to worry about, planning, food, and everything. Everything's already done. And we see that. Now, Jericho's not going to be one of those. God says He doesn't want them taking anything for them. It's just going to be for Him. We'll see as we get through this. So, from a human perspective, this is kind of an impossible thing to conquer because the way Jericho was built, the way it was going to be. If you have men up on the walls, up there on the walls and everything, more than likely, back in those days, they had what that they could shoot you with? Arrows. They had bows and arrows. And I think this is really one of those other remarkable events where we see the providence of God working for them. Is every time they marched around, you wonder why they just didn't start shooting. Why they didn't take them all out, or spear them, or whatever it may be. But they didn't. Maybe Jericho was just waiting for them to fight first. I doubt they had the same kind of, rules of engagement that America has. That they shoot first, then you shoot back. And we see that. But it is important to see that God is so involved within this fight of what's happening here. In fact, the Lord said, remember, as He said right here to Joshua, see, I've given Jericho into your hands, or into your hand. And we see that. And notice, this is past tense. Even before the battle has started, God said, you won. And God knows the faith of the people. He knows what they're doing. He knows the future. He sees what's happening and how great this is. Dad, go ahead.
I just wonder, after Joshua heard that from God and maybe he told the people, I wonder how many of them just really thought, what? We already have Jericho. The walls are still standing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what's going to happen here?
Exactly. I mean, and that's a really interesting thing when you think about that. Is because Joshua would tell them. I got one muted here. I got unmuted. There we go. As Joshua would tell them that the importance of it, and it's exactly right. I mean, and this is Joshua hasn't actually told everybody this yet, but I'm sure he does. We don't read of it, but I'm sure he does when he's giving the orders of what to do. So when we think about this, in our own self, God sees the victory before we do. God sees all the victories in our life before we even see them. Our battles may look overwhelming, but when God is in control and when he's there and when he's doing things, he declares the outcome before the process even begins. We go, how do we know that? Well, we have verses that talk about that. Think about Romans chapter 8, verse 37. If someone read that for us, please.
Yet in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us.
Thank you. Notice he didn't say we're just great conquerors. That's not what he said. He said we're conquerors through who? Here's talking about through Jesus. We see this and how important that is. Which now we go back to the Old Testament, 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 15. This is a very important verse for us to think about. And someone read that for us, please.
Do not be afraid nor dismayed because of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's.
Thank you. And that's how we need to think about it. And this is the same thing that the Israelites were doing in this moment. So with all this happening, we see that they're going to have to trust in God's strategy. God's saying, I have a plan. Do you trust me? And that's what we need to really think about here. And we're going to find that the Israelites, yes, they actually are trusting God in this moment. But the same thing needs to come of us, which brings us to these verses. So someone go ahead and read for us Joshua 6, 3 through 5, please.
You shall march around the city, all you men of war. You shall go all around the city once. This you shall do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. But the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times. And the priests shall blow the trumpets. It shall come to pass when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, that all the people shall shout with a great shout. Then the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up every man straight before him.
Thank you. So God gave Joshua an unusual strategy. Really unusual when you think about this. March around the city once a day for 6 days, and then 7 times on the 7th day, and then shout out as loud as you can. 7 priests, he said, they're going to go and carry these 7 trumpets before the Ark of the Covenant. So there's other priests there holding these before the Ark. And on the 7th day, they'll march around the city 7 times, and the priests will blow those trumpets, signifying basically for everybody to yell for this moment to start. And when the people hear that, we know that that will happen. But he said, that's not what's going to happen. Once you yell and you shout, guess what's going to happen to the walls? It says, notice it says fall down. Here, the important word on there. They're going to fall down flat. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So as we think about this here, he says they're going to fall down flat, and then you're going to go up. We're like, how are they going to get up the way this is set up, the way this is? And I'll show you that in a moment too. It's real interesting the way God had the walls fall and the way this took place. So this is the battle plan. This is your battle plan. Think about this. Who would go to battle with this plan? You always see it. Someone comes in, if we're going to go to war somewhere, battle, they're going to go in a room that's, no one can hear about, no one sees, no one realizes there. But they're talking about this battle plan. Now imagine you have the president there, you have generals and so on, and the president's like, okay, what do we got made up? And tell the president, say, well, we're going to march around this town 6 times, on the 7th day we're going to do it 7 times, and bam, we're going to win. And the president's going to go, next, who's got another idea? What's the next plan? That's exactly what we would see happening. Why would God want to defeat Jericho with a plan like this, is what we really think. One would have to imagine that the city of Jericho thought the same thing while they were watching what they were doing. You can just imagine how the army approached the city of Jericho, started walking around, and it's very important because it says the horns will be there, but it also tells us a little bit that all the men with swords were in front of them, ready to battle, ready to go. So I'm sure when the Jericho saw it, they thought, they're headed towards the first gate. They're going to go to a gate. They're going to try to get in. This is going to happen. But this isn't what takes place. Brethren, when we think about this, sometimes God's methods to us don't make any sense at all. They make no sense whatsoever. They just don't make sense to our logical minds when we think about it. Yet obedience to his instruction is the key to unlocking divine power that we see that comes from God. There, go ahead.
It goes in everything that God plans. There is an order. There is always a plan, and there's always specifics. The ram's horn, not a wooden horn,
right?
But a ram's horn, not one of metal, but a ram's horn is what you're to use. And the specific order of events.
Yep.
I mean, God is a planner.
Yes.
And He wants order in everything. And that brings us to even today in our worship and how we do things. God has an order of things, of what He wants.
That's exactly right. You know, we see that all the time in the Bible. All throughout the Bible, we see God having that plan. He doesn't just, at the last moment, just go, oh, we're going to try it this way. I mean, that's not what God does. And it's great. And He reminds us of this in different scriptures of the Bible. In fact, Isaiah 55, verses 8 through 9. Someone go and read that and see what it has to say.
For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts.
It's exactly what God's saying here. I think different than you do, because He doesn't think what we would think logically, but here God does. He knows exactly what He's going to do. He would use the smallest and simplest thing over the biggest and best thing. We see that. That's how God is. In fact, Proverbs, another very important verses here, in Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 6, it explains this. Someone go and read this for us, please.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight.
See, this is a remarkable verse because it completely just tells us straight out what we think may be right isn't more likely always going to be right, but God's ways are always right. And that's why He can make our pathway straight. But here's what happens. We have to trust Him. We have to trust Him, and we have to be willing to follow His instructions. And sometimes we don't even get the instructions. We just know what God would expect from us, and that's how we need to act and see there. So let's continue reading in Joshua here, Joshua chapter 6, verses 6 through 9. If someone read this for us, please.
Then Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord. And he said to the people, proceed and march around the city, and let him who is armed advance before the ark of the Lord. So it was, when Joshua had spoken to the people, that the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the Lord advanced and blew the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord followed them. The armed men went before the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard came after the ark, while the priests continued blowing the trumpets.
Thank you. I love how it says, many times it says, before the Lord, and then it clarifies it, meaning that's with the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant considered and is thought of as the presence of God. And notice what happened here. He's made it very clear. Those people looking down from that wall got to be thinking, what is that thing they're carrying? What is going on? Because you have people armed before it and also where? Behind it, it says, coming in after it. So we see this. So it's real important to get this of what we find with all this happening. This right here is going to take us to this next moment that is so important that we're going to look at that. I guess I guarantee you, most people can't do this. I know it's hard for me to do what they're going to talk about next, and I'm sure it is for others too. And you'll see that in just a moment. Dad, go ahead.
Do you know what the circumference around? Did they ever figure out what the circumference around the city was?
I didn't even look at that. When you look at the excavation, it's not really big. It's probably, you're talking probably all the way around, but maybe a mile and a half is what I'm
They're
thinking.
blowing those trumpets the whole time.
The whole city's hearing it. Yeah, the whole. And that's the thing. It's not like only a few people are hearing this thing. The entire town is hearing this. And those trumpets are just remarkable the way. And you got to think too, they're down lower, so it's rising, that sound, and that's what we see happening. But this is where it brings us next point. Talk about being, the loudness, but also being quiet, silent obedience. This is where it comes in for the people of what they're to do. And anybody knows me, I like to talk, but I'm good at listening too. I like to listen to people and hear what they have to say. But at the same time, while I'm listening, sometimes I have a bad habit of thinking about what I'm going to say. And that's what I do hear you. I hear everything you say. And I do that. But this is different here. This isn't listening. They're listening to God at the beginning, but they're not listening here. They're just doing exactly what God said. You're going to see it here. Verses 10 through 11. If someone read that for us, please.
Now Joshua has commanded the people, saying, you shall not shout or make any noise with your voice, nor shall a word proceed out of your mouth, until the day I say to you, shout. Then you shall shout. So he had the ark of the Lord circled the city going around it once. Then they came into the camp and lodged in the camp.
Thank you. So as we see this happening here, I'll say a few things. You notice how strict God is about talking, about speaking, about not even word, not even on what we would call a whisper. You know, nothing whatsoever. And you know, as we look at this, and some would say, oh, does that mean also when they get to the camp? No, it's just talking about the context before, which would be just dealing with marching, not when they would get back. So the people had to walk in silence for 6 days when they were there in silence. This required so much discipline, I guarantee you, and faith. Even though it wasn't a long walk, it would still require, the only sound that was heard was the sound of the ram's horn blowing and the army marching. That's all you're hearing, what's happening here. Then they all returned to the camp with confusion. What confusion there must have been for the people of Jericho. You know, looking down, thinking, what are they doing? To me, when you see somebody, it'd be so quiet, it would be kind of like an eerie feeling, you know, and kind of fearful in a sense. So, you know, in our lives, you know, we want to talk, we want to speak, to act, to make noise, but sometimes God calls on us to be still and to wait on Him. Silent obedience is a powerful, powerful expression of trust. It shows we believe God and knowing that He's working, you know, even when we can't see the progress. We saw this all the way back in Exodus. You go to Exodus 14, verse 14, and it says here, the Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. Mom, go ahead.
Was the trumpets being blown the 6 days?
It says the trumpet, that's what it says, they were blowing the trumpet. They were blowing the trumpets. And the 7th day, as we know, that would, well, really what it reads there, the way it sounds, they blew when they started off. And then on the 7th day is when it really goes out, that we see that happening after the 7th time around. And but as we find that, and that's kind of the way it reads, is they were leaving, everybody knew to go and move through it. Which brings also to Psalm 37, verse 7. Notice this one. Very simple. Rest in the Lord and wait what? Wait patiently. Notice. Just don't wait patiently, wait patiently for Him. You know, and this is so important that we see this as we see it happening, which brings us to our next point, acting in faith. So we're going to see here in acting in faith, we're going to find Joshua 6, 14, 16, 17, 20. Let's go and begin with 12 through 14 as we see what's happening here moving forward. If someone will read it for us, please. Now notice, here's the beginning. He's just told them what to do. They haven't done anything yet. He's told them what to do, and we see this happening. If someone will read that, please.
And Joseph rose early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. Then 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets from ram's horns before the ark of the Lord went out continually and blew with the trumpets. And the armed men went before them. But the rear guard came after the ark of the Lord, while the priests continued blowing the ark trumpets.
Continually.
Yeah. And the 2nd day they marched around the city once and returned to the camp, so they did 6 days.
So here's this is I said not they have. This is the 2nd day. 2nd day of the army, the priest, the Ark of the Covenant came again. You can imagine the soldiers of Jericho once again. They're prepared. They're ready for battle. Here we go. And all they see Israel doing is marching. I mean, marching. You know, but again, this happens. Just march around, trumpets blow. What, you know, I want you to think about what the discussion must have been in Jericho on that 2nd night. You know, after this happened, said, these people are scared to death of us. They really don't want to attack us. And, or you have somebody start thinking, or are they doing something different? Are they trying to find a way under the walls or in, you know, what, are there other people doing things somewhere else that we're not watching? You know, what's happening here? Well, we know it's not the case. On the 3rd day, Jericho prepares itself, of course, again, for the army to come in. Not just to march around. They're thinking that more likely they're going to attack. But on the 4th day, I really want to know what the city was thinking. You know, you get the 2nd, and the 3rd, the 4th. You know, they're dropping their guard probably a little bit. And, you know, they're probably thinking, are they just going to march around here and think we're going to surrender? You know, are they thinking that the Israelites are lazy or maybe just crazy when it comes down to this? And they're hurling, you know, probably insults. You know how wars are, how battles are. They're probably hurling, yelling insults down from the wall. You know, they're going to fight or just going to keep around walking, and the people are saying nothing. That's what's crazy. Here they're yelling and the people aren't responding back. It's like they're acting like they're not even what? They're not even there. I mean, they're just doing their thing. The 5th day is the same thing. The army of Israel is still quiet, walking around while the trumpets are blowing. The Lord's returning to the camp. And the 6th day, the same thing happens again. Would the city become, this was near again, think about, at this point, would the city become very complacent? You know, there were those in the wall, I'm sure, that had their guard, they were supposed to be there. But everybody else in the city, I guarantee you the first day, they were locked up in their homes prepared for the moment. Now they're probably just doing what? Going about the regular everyday business. I mean, like, there's nothing, these people are never going to come in, they're not going to fight us at all. And that's kind of what we see, but we know that's not the case. Yeah, go ahead.
You said this earlier, and I've not ever thought of it before. There was not a shot fired.
Nope.
From those in Jericho.
Exactly.
God's providence somehow worked. Those people were either afraid to do something or just awed by what they were doing and just curious. Okay, let's just watch and see what these people are going to do. Because after all, we got these huge walls.
Right.
They're not going to be able to break in.
That's exactly, you know, they may have been ordered, you know, don't be, you know, don't do anything until they do something. But whatever it was, God was involved. We know without a doubt. And that's why I think that is actually probably even more remarkable than the walls coming down. I mean, because, you know, here is God, you know, doing this. He doesn't control us like robots, but we know something was causing them not to do so. Which brings us a little bit further. Let's look at verses 15 and 16. If someone read that for us, please.
But it came to pass on the seventh day that they rose early about the dawning of the day, and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner. On that day only they marched around the city 7 times. And the 7th time it happened, when the priests blew the trumpets, that Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city."
Here we go. So here we are, day 7. On the 7th day, it looks like everything's happening the same, right? That nothing's changed. I wonder if the city prepared for battle in the same way they did on the first day. I don't think they would have. I think they're like I said, I think they've become complacent probably at this moment. But after the first time walking around the city, the army does not go back to the camp this time. They do a second trip. Now you've got to think the city's like sending somebody to the king or to the king and to the generals, whatever. Something's changed. Something's going here, and then they do a third time. Think about this. But with all this happening, there's still no sound coming from the army except ram horns. Do they have any intention of Jericho? Now they've started the second lap. What about the third lap? What about the 4th time? What about the 5th time? What about the 6th time? But on the 7th time, around something different happens. All the army shouts. Now this shout must have just been, yeah, I mean, where the people are like, what is going on now? Because they've been quiet all this time. Now they hear them. You know, brethren, what we find once again, there's a time to be silent, a time to shout. You know, when we align our actions with God's instructions, miracles can happen. Not from human beings. We know that can happen, but from God it definitely can. But God knows and chooses what He needs to do and what He thinks needs to be done. Things sometimes we don't understand. Hebrews 11:30 is, this is where we see the heroes of faith. And we see Jericho mentioned here. And notice what it just says, by faith. Notice it doesn't say by God. I love this. Even though God did it, but it says by faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were encircled for 7 days. You know, God could have had the walls fall whenever He wanted. But He wanted the faith of the people to do this, to be involved. They believed it was really going to happen. And it would. Yeah, go ahead.
Wasn't there about 60,000 that marched?
It said there were 40,000 when it came across. 40,000,
okay.
Yes.
Think about when you're listening to a football game on TV. The roar of the crowd is deafening.
Yep.
40,000 people all shouting at the same time. And not just for a second.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But for some length of time.
Yep. And you know, I look at this too, I think about it this way, because the Jericho, you know, like you said, like the picture saw, it's not really big. You know, when you're talking, people are walking, and when those 40,000, when they're coming back around, they're almost probably meeting here, but they're not. They're turning out and going this way. This time, when they keep going around, it's almost probably like the town is completely encircled by people. And so everyone's going to hear this. No one's going to get away from it. Which brings us to James 2:17. Thus also faith by itself does not have works is what? It's dead. So in other words, if they would have said, God, we know you can do it. And Joshua said, hey, I just met the man of the Lord's army. More than likely, Joshua realizing it's an angel, but looked like a human. And he sees this and goes, why do we have to do anything at all? It's not what it does. You have to have some kind of works. You have to be doing something. Brings us 17 through 20. Let's go ahead and see what happens. This is where it takes place when we see the destruction. So we'll go and read this, please.
Now the city shall be doomed by the Lord to destruction, it and all who are in it. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, and all who are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that were sent. And you, by all means, abstain from their cursed things, lest you become a curse when you take of their cursed things, and make the camp of Israel a curse, and trouble it. But all the silver and gold and vessels of bronze and iron are consecrated to the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord. So the people shouted when the priests blew the trumpets. And it happened when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat. Then the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city.
Thank you. So here Joshua tells the people to shout, as we just heard, because the Lord has given them the city. All the city was to be destroyed. How many people in it? How many people in it were supposed to be destroyed? Every one of them. Every one of them, except for Rahab and all those that were in her house with her. All those in her house, we all were relatives. Specific instructions are given in verse 18. The people are not to take anything as plunder, which is a normal thing usually when you're a war, is to take things that you find. All of it is devoted for the destruction, or else trouble, or else trouble and destruction will come upon the person that takes it. But all the silver, gold, and bronze were to be brought into the Lord, and God. And God had them have these things. I've heard some say, well, they had to have, probably money to pay for everybody's stuff. No, they didn't. God was giving them everything. Remember, this was going to be used later, we're sure, down the road for certain things, maybe the temple or whatever it may be. They had these things still there. So we look at this, but what's interesting is the walls fell flat down. They fell flat. What does that mean? Well, in the Hebrew, it's interesting when you see fell down flat, is actually the way it's translated. There's two Hebrew words. The first one is nafal, which sounds like fall. That's actually what it means. And the next word is takatah. And when you look at that word, it means bottom or below. Fall, bottom, or below. We're like, what is that getting at? What are you trying to say? Here's the little understanding of what would happen, is that the wall fell below itself. Think about that for a moment. Excavation of Jericho have revealed that this is precisely what they find. So it wasn't like the top walls fell down. The other wall, it fell straight like this. And see what it is, the way they had it, they had these other rocks holding up the main wall that we see here. When those rocks start to fall, the rest of it's going to go with it. In fact, notice these pictures right here that I have to show you this. This is how the city would have looked. Now, think about being down here. So this is what the city would look like. Here's these walls. This is a retaining wall, and this is actually the wall here. If you get rid of this retaining wall, what's going to happen to this wall? It's going to come, guess how? Straight down.
It's going to implode.
Exactly. It's going to implode. We see how this makes so much sense. I mean, look at here. Look at these pictures. Here's the lower mud brick wall. There's an upper mud brick wall. They're actually there that they found in archaeology. Here's the red fallen mud brick. Here's where we see everything, these disappearing, and this brick falling straight down like that. So all that is here now. Straight down like that. Same thing with this. What does it look like this makes now available for Israel? It's a ramp. It's a ramp. Just run right on in. I mean, because remember, God didn't have them killed on their own. They had to go into the city, and they had to kill these people. So it's a military strategy that you think would never work unless the Lord was on their side. With all the walls down, the spies are sent back to Rahab's house to deliver her and her household from destruction. So I want us to really, don't think, there's no way this could have happened. It makes perfect sense. You can see this. If you've ever seen walls, we've seen that even today, in destruction. I mean, in big tragedies, things that have happened, and disasters, where this wall here is usually underground, or it may not be because this wasn't here, it's just down low, and it allows those walls to fall. And God is just remarkable in this extent of how He does this. So with all this happening, we have to now give God the glory. And this is where this goes to give God the glory in everything He was and what He's about. And we read this by beginning talking about Rahab now. So I'm going to read 21 and 24 for us, please.
And they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, ox and sheep and donkey, with the edge of the sword. But they buried the city and all that was in it with fire, only the silver and gold and the vessels of bronze and iron. They put into the treasury of the house of the Lord.
Thank you. So victory was followed by a consecration. The Israelites did not take the credit of the spoils, which they would usually do. They gave the first fruits of the conquest of God, recognizing Him as the source of their triumph. Something else all around important, talked about fire. that they burned everything, remember I said they found actually vessels which food would have been in them, you know, showing that these people were really, in a sense, they had gone back to their everyday life after the couple times of marching around the walls. And they were expecting this to happen whatsoever. I mean, you think about this. Now, we need to get this too. A lot of battles will take place at night, you know, certain battles. And, you know, if you're trying to do it, you know, quietly, you know, or catch them off guard. There is no way you catch Jericho off guard here. Number one, they've been aware you've been here all this time. And number two, remember, it's daytime. It is daytime when this is happening, when this is taking place. So let's go and continue to read 22 to 23. If someone will read that for us, please.
But Joshua said to the two men who had spied at the country, out the country, go into the harlot's house, and from there bring out the woman and all that she has, as you swore to her. And the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father, her mother, her brothers, and all that she had. And so they brought all her relatives and left them outside the camp with them.
Thank you. So here we go. You know, we find this happening as we see here that they're brought back to the outskirts of the Israel camp, all the family, Rahab. And you know, if God would have had them killed, who would really know? I mean, you think about that. Who would really know? Why would God protect somebody that's not even an Israelite? It's because she had faith. There it is again, in God. She didn't have faith in her general. She didn't have faith in her king. She had faith in God. And this is so important to see this. Dad, go ahead.
I just looked up the estimated population of Jericho at that time.
Right.
Because we don't have anything in writing. 2,000 to 3,000.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not like I said, it's not a huge city.
That's why they call it a town.
It's called, yeah, a lot of places, in the Bible call it town. Sometimes it'll be referred to as a city. But this is what we have here. So, brings us next verse. I'm going to read this, tell them we'll set a time. Actually 25, yeah. And Joshua spared Rahab, a harlot, her father's household, and all that she had. So she dwells in Israel to this day because she did the messengers from Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. Just a reminder free for you this morning. Who is she to David? King David. Does Rahab have any kind of, you know, she related to David in any way? She was his great-great-grandmother. Exactly right. I mean, it just shows you how important this woman was. I mean, the faith that she had, and we see the faith in David, even though David made a lot of mistakes, but I'm sure Rahab did too. But we see that more like that, we see that she changed. She changed for the better. Which brings us 26 to 27. I'll read this also. It says, Then Joshua charged them at that time, saying, Cursed be the man before the Lord who rises up and builds the city of Jericho. Oh, if you build back on this place, you're cursed too. Guess what never happened? No one ever rebuilt on it. On top of it. Didn't happen. And he says, And he shall lay the foundations with his firstborn, and with his youngest he shall set up his gate. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout all the country. Very important to understand this last point here, that everybody heard about Jericho. In the country, not Jericho. Country means all the land of Canaan. It started spreading everywhere like wildfire who this man was, of what was happening, and about their God. So God kept his word to Joshua. God was with Joshua, brought Israel victory in the most amazing way, walking around, in circles of faith. It was, that's a good title for a sermon. In circles of faith, just circling around here of what we see and we understand. So why did God accomplish the victory in this way? Because God just wanted to show the people, if you have faith in me, there's really not a whole lot you have to do. And we have to do something, but God will take care of it if we'll allow him to do so. So when God gives us victory, we must remember to give him the glory. We'll close with these. Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but to you, your name. Give glory because of your mercy, because of your truth. And then finally, this last one, we find in 1 Corinthians 10:31. And that is, therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all in the glory of God. Do all in the glory of God. And when we look at things that way, God will look over us. We need to recognize that the battle belongs to God. Trust his strategies, even when they defy logic. Obey silently and faithfully. Act boldly in faith. And then give God all the glory when the victory comes. Don't forget about that part. When things work out in your life, don't forget to give God the glory. We should be giving glory to everything that goes on in our life. And that's how we see it today. So we'll close there. Appreciate all your time, comments, and thank you.